I was born and raised in Dunedin, where our Peace and Conflict Centre is, and my father is German and my mother is from New Zealand, and they're both teachers, so that had sort of a profound influence on my life growing up, and I always sort of recognized the university as a space for critical thought and the ability to sort of contest public discourses. I did initially work in politics, and I studied political science and international relations. We can see all around us right now with social movements all around the world, decolonial movements, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, all of these things sort of suggest that not only are things going somewhat miserably wrong, but there is a real potential and capacity for change right now, and I wanted to sort of be part of that. So the question really focused on how academics had contested notions of international peace building. But essentially it was a giant critical discourse analysis. So I constructed what I would say was a fairly representative picture of the field. It contained 600 articles, which were pretty highly publicized from 110 core scholars. And I sort of did a bit of a bibliometric analysis, actor network analysis, coupled with interviews to really understand both how ideas were being generated and transmitted, but also what the impetus was behind those ideas. So speaking to different academics about how their research was generated and how they actually hoped that would change things was a super sort of exciting part of my research for me. I think a lot of what I've been generating out of my PhD research is really a critique or a conversation with scholars about how they're attempting to create new knowledge and how they're attempting to transmit that. We can now chart and trace how knowledge is being produced and transmitted much better than ever before because we have digital tools, and most of the spaces which academics are contributing to are online as well. So if you're a peace builder working on the ground in Cambodia, not only do you not have access to these new forms of knowledge because of restricted publishing and the costs of being able to achieve these materials, but you also don't necessarily have the technical ability or the linguistic ability to be able to comprehend what is often very, very dense and esoteric writings. So these are some of the sorts of barriers within academia which prevent peace research from really connecting with, I would say, its intended recipients and helping communities to be more informed and empowered and create the positive change that they feel is required. Within my research, one of the biggest findings was scholars and practitioners and policymakers all blamed what is called the liberal peace for peace building's failures, saying that we can't implement these things that are Eurocentric and modernist and Western-centric in other contexts. It doesn't work, it doesn't match the culture, it doesn't fit with their aspirations. We recognize that situations in the global north, in New Zealand, in the UK, in America are also sort of quite problematic. But the issue is we're not really generating new ideas that might be suited. There is a trend of ethnographic research going into these communities to create bottom-up or crowdsourced indicators and initiatives, which are fantastic and are really, really worthwhile in terms of being able to help reorient peace operations to the publics where they're actually implementing them. So the goal here is now to connect peace-building literature with decolonial sort of attempts, epistemologies of the South, social movements in the North, to try and figure out not only ways that we can improve understandings and varieties of peace for post-conflict communities, primarily within the global South, but also for marginalized and oppressed communities within the global North as well. Currently, I'm working with a couple of different scholars, some here at the National Center for Peace and Conflict and some within South Korea as well. Within the Korean Peninsula, you've had quite an orthodox and traditional understanding of peace, which is very state-centric. But that means there are a whole bunch of experiences of peace that we're not capturing or we're not aware of, such as migrant populations, defectors, people that were sympathetic to the communist regime and were sort of violently attacked and executed by the South Koreans during, the last sort of 50 years. By using new approaches, such as the Varieties of Peace framework developed in UMEA, we're trying to figure out ways that we can encourage peace from the bottom up, despite the fact that there is a division which prevents mobilization of populations. Good research has been done on sort of this global north, global south disparity, and the way in which research produced by scholars in post-conflict situations or countries within the global south actually is quite different to how we write and theorize within the north. Primarily, there's a sort of practical component to a lot of global south scholarship, which within the north, we always try and get a theoretical contribution as well, which really undermines the ability for the global south to contribute to the northern discourses. Beyond that, we've also got all kinds of things like funding issues, language issues, and just the structures and everyday processes and constraints on these researchers. Using Cambodia as sort of a case study, I've been working with the Rei Foundation to create an online database of context-specific research. But really what I'm trying to do there is bring in relational networking of ideas so that people can follow an idea and its surrounds, see if it's been tested in other cases, and get a better overview of peacebuilding research as it applies to Cambodia without necessarily having to do an entire PhD on it. And my hope is to work with researchers as well to provide a collaborative space in which local researchers from universities can actually help shape research agendas, generating questions from these peoples themselves, and then providing them the assistance and support and technology so that they can undertake those problems. The other thing, and what I'm getting into with my research now around these sort of framings of peace and understandings of peace, is that alternatives do exist, and they're being practiced and experienced every single day all around the world, finding new ways to connect different strands and different streams of researchers with one another so that those ideas can be shared and transmitted will create a much bigger space for innovation and the ability to really start thinking and imagining or exercising new realities, whether or not for academics or post-conflict communities or people that are just struggling in their everyday lives within sort of the constraints of our current society. I would really love to begin bringing these voices together and understanding them through the lens of peace, which we keep trying to sort of constrain and make measurable and comparable, but it can also be something that is really ambitious and can allow for blue sky thinking about what the future could look like. I think that's an important narrative that we've slowly started to forget through this sort of technocratic process, and so reopening that to contestation so that these new ideas can be filtered down and help inform policies is really important to me, and will require sort of a whole of society approach, working with different organizations, groups, politicians, leaders, etc.